All right, and today's debate is going to be Auggs and Capp versus Cee and Freedagoat on the proposition God exists, where Capp and Auggs will take the affirmative view. The relevant judge and moderator of today's discussion is going to be Polar, and you guys can find us at discord.gg/KG Lounge. With that being said, y'all got it.
All right, I'll get my 2 minutes
Everything he said.
uninterrupted so we can wait for Cap. So essentially, we're going to be running a cumulative case. We're going to be using anthropic reasoning and fine-tuning for discoverability. We're going to be stacking these two on top of each other. So essentially, the anthropic reasoning part wants to say, look, if ISA is true and theism predicts vastly more observers than, like you, than atheism does, then theism is vastly better supported by the evidence of your existence. SIA is true, and theism vastly predicts more observers like you than atheism does. Therefore, theism is vastly better supported by the evidence of your existence. So that's going to be one thing that we can update on for theism. The next thing is going to be fine-tuning for discoverability. There are certain constants that, if changed slightly, we wouldn't be able to use a lot of our scientific tools in discovery. Under theism, it's not surprising to find yourself in a world where, this world is intelligible to the rational agents that are inside of it. It's discoverable. Under naturalism or a hypothesis that's indifferent to the observers, under both the anthropic argument and for discoverability, there is no principled reason that would have a high likelihood at all. Under theism, there is. So we can update on these two things and get to theism. That's basically just sort of the layout of the argument. I hope Cap is ready. Yeah, I'll concede the rest of the time.
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, Free, do you want to respond to any of that? Or?
Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I'll just go
first.
That's
Are y'all doing
I'm,
talking stick with timer? Because what's the timer for the talking stick? So I'll run
1
that.
minute.
2 minutes each team.
2 minutes, sorry, 2 minutes.
2 minutes for both of y'all?
No, each team. Like
No, each
one
team.
team gets 2 minutes.
Okay, hold on. I'll pull up the timer. 2 minutes for each team. Okay, so
Okay, do I
Cap
start
and
or?
Auggs, y'all are like sharing time, right?
Right.
Yep, and they're sharing time as well.
All right, 2 minutes. Let me get the timer. It started now.
Yeah, so I want to just first clarify and flag for whoever's judging the debate currently that the hypothesis is underspecified, so I'm not even sure how it can serve as evidence for anything because they haven't told me what they think God is or who they think God is or what qualities they think God has at all. So it's plausible that there could be a designer that just like doesn't really care at all about anything. And so it's not really clear to me how this would be evidence for there being their particular God or whatever. So I think they need to get clear on the hypothesis. And second of all, Loki did not track the two things they were updating on. So I'll just wait till they explain it again. Free, if you have anything to say, you can go.
Yeah, so from what I remember, they named two reasons or two motivations for the for God's existence. One was the anthropic reasoning, and second one was the fine-tuning for discoverability. I'm not going to add much on to for CSAT for the fine-tuning for discoverability. When it comes to anthropic reasoning, I do agree that the argument was valid from what I heard about the argument. I'm just going to be agnostic towards its premises or towards like the motivation. That's all I have to say about that.
Okay, are they conceding their time or what?
Yeah, I see my time.
I concede my time.
All right, Cap, are you here? Cap? Do I have a teammate or?
Auggs.KG, hello?
All right, well, anyways, to sort of address the first thing he said, I mean, look,
Yo, do you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Did you hear everything they said, Cap?
God damn, I should lagging.
Also, can we, restart my time, please? Because I'm, trying to get my teammate.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
By the way, Polar, if
Can
you
we
can
just
mute
pause
me,
it?
if I breathe too loud, mute
please?
me. I can unmute myself
I don't
currently.
want this to turn into a 2v1. Yo, Cap, is your shit?
It was lagging. Am I gonna?
Hello?
You're good now. Oblock,
I can
let's
hear
go,
you right
man. Let's
now.
go.
Bro, Auggs, just debate, bitch.
All right, bro. Sure. Okay, so
Okay,
to address.
Y'all hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
bro. Are you here?
Okay, good.
All right, start the time. Did you hear what they said?
Yeah.
All right, so you can address what C said if you'd like. If not, I can go.
Yeah, so the only thing concerned with the hypothesis is just going to be a mind that created the universe that's axiologically motivated. All that means is that this thing is one which is going to be motivated to bring about value in the world. It doesn't have to be all good, and it also doesn't have to only desire valuable things. But that's the only properties that we're going to be
Yeah,
ascribing
which seems like sort of
to
a
this
plausible
thing.
entailment, right? Minds tend to be axiologically motivated. So if you're trying to make some argument that it's going to be a hit on the priors, since it's a plausible entailment, the priors aren't going to be impacted as much. But essentially, I think C said he didn't track most of it. So basically, what we're doing,
Who the
who the
fuck is
fuck
that?
is that?
It's
Basically, what we're
Vikings, so-
basically what we're doing is we're stacking on Matthew Adelstein's anthropic argument with discoverability and getting two different updates for theism. Cap, you want to run out, lay out discoverability one more time, real quick.
So the idea is that there are these type of constants. There's a narrow range of epistemically possible, or no, there's a wide range of epistemically possible constants. Within that wide range of epistemically possible constants, there's a narrow range of constants that are able to be discovered by our current scientific instruments. That's very valuable because without it, we wouldn't be able to have any type of scientific discoveries or things like that. And then that data is more respected under theism than naturalism. It's very simple.
Given that this designer is axiologically motivated, scientific discovery is valuable to the agents within the universe. So that's how you get the prediction under theism. Under naturalism or a hypothesis that's indifferent, there is no principled reason that we would value that outcome in the total constant space. So
Yeah,
you
we
get an
have
update on
Your
theism.
time is up.
Like
Your
Yeah.
time is up.
okay.
Yeah, let's I guess I'll just give a response now. So in response to the first thing, you're saying that your hypothesis is that there's a mind that created a universe that's motivated to bring about value. Values there is obviously going to be relative to your preferences, your desires, your stances. I don't really know what you take to be valuable. I'm just going to assume that when you mention value, you're just mentioning things like life, complexity, etc., etc. If that's the case, I see no reason to believe why it has to be the product of a mind that creates a universe. It could just be some sort of naturalistic explanation. It could be a simulation. It could be some sort of spontaneous particle. It could be the excitation of a field that happens just because it's the disposition of fields to be excited, stuff like that. So I guess I'll just be a response to the broad idea that there must be a mind, or it's better to assume that there is a mind. My hypothesis is more simplistic. Less things are posited, so it would have higher probability, and would receive the same update given the evidence. The second thing, I think you mentioned fine tuning for discoverability. Can you just name those constants that you're talking about that would be undiscoverable given slight variations? I think there's going to be like a normalizability problem here because suppose that we're talking about, say, like the gravitational constant, for example. The gravitational constant could take presumably any real value in the set of real numbers. But obviously, if you pick a random constant value in a set of real numbers, and you try to find a probability of it being that particular value, it's going to be zero because the denominator is infinite. And so it seems to be difficult to normalize the scale of constants that, or ranges or values that the constants could take. I just don't know why I would accept normalizability that you're employing here in order to make the probabilistic arguments you're doing. Free, do you have anything to add?
I think you pretty much said most for the fine tuning for the discoverability part. I just think that first I wanna clear out something when it comes to the simplicity. You said that um I think August at least said it that priors are not gonna be affected as much because God will be axiologically motivated. I don't see why how that attacks the simplicity or anything related to parsimony or priors. Second, I don't see how if we do account for fine tuning, I don't if you don't account for fine tuning for life and discoverability, you just account for fine tuning for discoverability. I don't see why that will be more motivating towards God's existence. Maybe you can clarify something to that, but I don't think C's question at least was answered. Um, to or not answer. I don't think his point was answered when it comes to why that designer has to specifically be the kind of classical theistic god. And I also want to add something on too, if I still have time, when it comes to something that C said. Oh fuck, it's my
Just
time.
ran
My
out of
bad.
time.
It's my bad. Um. One last thing then.
Just ran out of time.
Oh,
Okay,
just ran out of time.
so
Fuck. Sorry, my alarm went off, so I
no,
couldn't say what I wanted.
you're
My
good.
bad.
So Cap, I'll respond to a couple things and then I'll let you go. So I want to respond to the parsimony point. So again, parsimony is going to be something that matters all else equal. Obviously, me and Cap aren't granting that all else is equal. we think theism is going to win out on different abductive virtues here, like explanatory scope, which can also be put into the priors or the posterior. It doesn't really matter. And then, the point about God being axiologically motivated is just that we tend to see minds that are motivated by value. So it seems like a plausible entailment, meaning even if we're adding on some sort of stipulation there, it's not going to impact the priors as much, right? Now, the third point, I just want to respond to one more thing Free said. Free said, if we account for fine-tuning for discoverability and not fine-tuning for life, I don't understand why we're getting an update. Well, that's just because of the argument we laid out, right? Under theism, being motivated by value, there is a reason that he would value scientific discovery. Under naturalism, there is no principled reason because, it's completely indifferent to the observers in the universe. Cap, now you can go.
Yeah, so on the stuff about there being sort of naturalistic explanation, you didn't give us any reason as to why certain constants would be preferred as opposed to other ones within that explanation. You said it could be an excitation of fields, etc. But again, none of that, again, the point is that we have reason to assume principle of indifference over the constant space given naturalism, given all of the things you posited that could explain it. It doesn't tell you about what type of constants would be at certain waves, right? Also, the prior probability point doesn't really matter. With a significantly high likelihood ratio, some hypotheses can still be confirmed given the evidence. And I think Auggs responded to the point about parsimony, how it's not granting that all else is equal. And in response to, you want some type of examples of constants that are discoverable, you can look at cosmic micro background radiation. Basically, it's going to be determined by the ratio of baryons, which are just normal matter particles, to photons, which are just light particles. The ratio there happens to be exactly ideal for maximizing the intensity of the cosmic micro background radiation and also being able to pick it up, right? If it were off by, I think, it's 10 to the 30th power, we wouldn't be able to pick it up with any scientific instruments at all, given that our instruments are there to pick up these type of photons and baryons. Another one, it seems to be we can just use the fine structure constant, which just governs the strength of the electromagnetic force. If it were larger, the electromagnetic force would be stronger, while if it were weaker, the electromagnetic force would be weaker. If it were greater, then we wouldn't be able to make things like wood fires, we wouldn't be able to domesticate fire, we wouldn't be able to discover these things. And it seems like that type of discoverability there is going to be valuable towards our civilizations and our life. Another effect of it being smaller would be that the resolving power of the light microscope would decrease. Electric transformers and motors wouldn't even be as efficient as they are, and the usability of the magnetic compass wouldn't even be able to work. So yeah, those are also things that would help out with our discoverability. So yeah, I think I responded to all of the significant points. You said values are going to be relative to preferences. That presupposes this type of realism under value theory, which it presupposes anti-realism, actually. I don't know why I would grant that. There can be stance-independent values, I think. So maybe you have an argument as to why that's going to be the case. And then, yeah, that's about it.
Okay. See, do you want me to respond first? I don't even have that much time, so
No,
I'm
I'll
probably gonna
respond first. Oh, you can respond first, I suppose. I'll just keep my notes going.
Yeah. So sorry, I would let you, but I do have to dip very soon. There's 3 points I wanna get onto. One, which is August response to my point about fine tuning for discoverability and life. Well, if the whole fine tuning for discoverability being motivation for God's existence is gonna rest upon certain values, if we do take that values are something which is subjective for certain reasons, then I could just tell you there is a world where the universe is perfectly fine tuned for life and discoverability, but there is just the in that universe or that world it's just full of psychopaths, and they all share values that people should be either eradicated or people should suffer, and they think that this universe is um given those values is just not gonna be fine-tuned because it allows for humans to live and to thrive and not actually explode into nothing. At that point, are you gonna say that the universe is being fine-tuned is still um for discoverability still something that leads to God because of those certain values? So at that point, I think if it just purely rests on values, I'm not gonna accept that. Without that, I'm just gonna need more motivation to why fine tuning leads to the God hypotheses, and to respond to Cap's point about being anti-realist about values. Um, even if I do grant that there is some normative domain where values are stance independent, if you're if first you're gonna have to specify the normative domain, but those values being stance independent, outside of the fact that it's more ontology inflationary, it's not my burden to explain why either I use semantics the way I do when it comes to values, or why am I an anti-realist. It's going to be on realists to explain why their values are objective, or why should we posit such ontology when it comes
Your
to
time's
values.
up. 2 minutes timer's up.
Okay, sorry. You're going to respond later. What's his name? See.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
so I'll respond. So Freedagoat said if discoverability is rested upon certain values and values are subjective, then there's no reason we get the prediction there. But then he said he might accept SIRs, but we would need to specify the domain. Obviously, when we're talking about value, it's going to be some sort of like moral value, moral consideration. Now, look, we can even maybe accept that values are subjective and still get the prediction here. And
No. Look, I don't want them to burden shift because that's a big burden shift. Given that Cee prior to Freedagoat responding made the claim the value is going to be relative towards your preferences, desires, and stances.
He did make.
So it
Okay, we
actually
can flag
is
that
their
for the
burden.
judges that he did make that claim, and then there was no argument for that. That's fine. But what
And
I'm
then
saying is,
Freedagoat said that
Go
it's
ahead.
our burden to motivate realism, when that wasn't the point. The point was they made a claim, and we're just asking for an argument for that.
Right, and then, but the other thing is, I still think we get the prediction here because of things we see minds tend to do. Right, minds tend to value other life. Given that he would value other life, it's not surprising to see that the life that he creates is able to
Yeah, we can just do
discover
an
and use
axiological induction there.
scientific tools. Right.
Yeah, we can just do an axiological induction there and say that all the minds we observe are going to be ones for which value is these type of things. So then if we
Yeah.
see another mind, it's probably going to have that type of value as well.
And
That's
also
fine.
the classical theism point, like we're not holding to like classical theism, we're not holding to any like divine simplicity, any of those doctrines. We're simply just talking about what we stipulated in the beginning. And then for the anthropic point, right, just to add this into our cumulative case from the beginning. Basically, I haven't heard a response to this so far, but essentially, if SIA is true and theism predicts vastly more observers than atheism, then theism is better supported by the evidence. SIA is true and it predicts more observers than atheism, therefore theism is better supported. You could take like an intuition pump. Like let's say I had a coin that was fixed. If it lands on heads, 10
All right, your
people
time is up.
Oh fuck.
No problem.
No worries, we got
now.
the point. We got the point. See, you can respond for a
Yeah,
second.
yeah, cool. So I'm gonna first need to clarify what SIE is because I'm not familiar with the acronym. But look, I'm gonna respond to the points you made in the time before this one. So first you said parsimony, all else is not equal, so you win out on different abductive virtues, i.e. explanatory scope. Presumably like the amount of things that you can explain. We're just talking about one singular update here, right? So we're updating one piece of evidence. So when you say you can win out on explanatory scope, that's going to be talking about you updating on the hypothesis. But I'm talking about particularly the prior probability of the hypothesis, right? So I think you're just conflating two different things here. I'm talking about how the prior probability of the hypothesis here is different from my view. My view is going to have a higher prior probability because it's more parsimonious. Okay, maybe when you update, it could get a stronger update. If it is the case, it has high explanatory scope, which I don't agree with. But I don't think you responded to what I'm saying there. Also get clear on how you're updating using like a Bayesian account, because I have a response to that if you are. Second thing, said minds are motivated by value, so it's plausible that God's mind is also motivated by value. Here's the thing, right? God's mind is like categorically distinct from human minds, right? Presumably under your view. It's like, for example, God's mind is presumably not physical, right? But human minds are physical, and God's mind does not evolve to respond to the environment and adapt and live, but human minds do. So you trying to make this analog is like really weird here because I don't even understand the similarity. There's no like sufficient symmetry between the two such that you can make the claim that because human minds do this, that God's mind do this. It was like me saying, oh, human minds tend to value this, so animal minds also tend to value this, right? That might be true in a vacuum, but it's not true certainly for some other things, like animal minds, like rat minds, or I don't know, like squid minds, octopus minds don't seem to value the same things human minds do. And so the difference would be even more stark for a non-physical, this sort of non-physical posit that you're trying to posit here. He said God values scientific discovery. Naturalism doesn't explain that because it doesn't explain what would be more preferred. I don't know why I'd agree with the principle of indifference, but let's just say that I do agree with the principle of indifference. It doesn't respond to the normalizability objection that I gave prior. I'm just going to flag it one more time. So the issue is that the range of values that constants can take is in any set of the real numbers, right? Presumably, okay. And so the
Time is up.
denominator, if you try to find a relative,
Fuck, I wanted to say something.
Time is
time
up.
is up.
Anyways.
Yeah, 2
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah, your time is up, nigga. Okay. So, Cee mistracked. prior, I responded to the point about how the prior probability doesn't matter, given that we're arguing that theism has a significantly high likelihood ratio given the evidence. So it can still be confirmed given the evidence, even if the prior probability is low. I
Especially
made this
since it's
point very
cumulative
clear.
and
He
we're using two
mistracked
pieces
that,
of evidence,
right?
right?
He mistracked that. Also, we're using the Bayesian likelihood ratio. Um, to respond about the point about how the analogical induction is going to be disanalogous, right? We're arguing, well, human minds are rational agents. Presumably, animal minds aren't really rational agents. And it seems to be the case that the hypothesis we're arguing for involves a rational agent, right? Because he's acting on the basis of his
Yeah,
desires, right?
to touch on the
He's
physical point,
axiologically motivated.
to touch on the physical point, well, you know, the minds we see that are sort of motivated by this value are physical, and God's mind isn't physical. I'll just ask, like, why is that property relevant to the projection of the induction here, right? Because you can only say, you know, an induction isn't projectable if there is some relevant property that would make it so. But I don't see why God's mind being non-physical is a relevant property distinguishing that from other rational agents. We're going to need an argument for that. And then to let them know what SIA is, it's basically just the principle that a hypothesis that predicts more observers of your type better predicts your existence, right?
Also, the motivator for a principle of indifference is just that it's just going to be this type of symmetry of evidence, right? So, like, suppose we have a coin and we flip it and we know nothing about it, suggesting it's biased. Obviously, we're going to assign an equal probability
Right.
there, given that we have no reason to unequally distribute the probabilities, right? If we have equal ignorance, that should lead to equal probabilities, right? It's motivated to avoid arbitrary assumptions. If your evidence treats like these type of same outcome or several outcomes the same, then your probability should treat them the same too. And we're just saying that given the evidence here, we have no reason under naturalism to assume that there's going to be an unequal distribution of probabilities over the constant space, right?
And I don't know how much time we have, but just to respond to the last point about, you know, the priors.
You
Like,
just
yeah,
ran out
so
of time.
okay, that's
Uh,
Okay, wait.
okay.
I was gonna
See,
say,
can I respond first?
yeah, but just try to make it quick.
Okay, sure. I literally have to dip out after this response. So, there's two things I want to flag out. One, um, again, I do grant that the SAA argument or whatever the anthropic reasoning is valid. I don't think it's sound, and I'll explain why in a second. But first thing that I want to respond to, you can be a moral since they named the moral as a domain that as a normative domain where we talk about values. There are a lot of realists that are realists and they don't take motivation externalism or don't take the view that that humans have objective values or that humans are motivated objectively or like sense independently, whatever like outside of whatever they thought. Those like you have to take a very, very, very specific naturalist view to uphold that. To uphold the view that humans have objective values. So I'm gonna need an argument for that specific naturalist view. And two, just because something is better expected does not mean that the theory is always going to be more probable than the other theory. I can give you an example of this. So let's just say there's a person wins a lottery ticket, and the other guy says, "Well, God must exist because this amount of luck is just like impossible in atheism. There's not a single atheist hypothesis that it predicts this." Even if the person is correct, and for some reason a theistic hypothesis does explain this better, that does not mean that the theistic hypothesis is going to be more probable. There could be a lot of other things that could be expected under atheism, and there could be a lot of other things that are expected under theism. Just because something is expected under a certain hypothesis in comparison to other hypotheses does not mean that the theory is going to be always more probable. There's a famous argument against God, against the arguments for God called the God of the gaps um, issue.
All right, your time
So
is
I'm
up.
gonna.
Your time is up.
Okay, yeah, that was my
Yeah, I
last
mean,
response.
free to
He's gonna
go.
respond next time.
You just did all that
Here,
yapping
wait,
for
Cap, let
nothing.
me
We
go
already
first.
said.
Let me go first. So
Okay.
I want to point out, he said he does grant the argument is valid, not sound, and that he was going to address that. He never fucking addressed it in his response. So
Didn't
okay,
have
I
the
can just
time,
By the
bro.
way,
I can just,
he
it's fine.
mistracked.
I can just give an intuition pump for the first premise, and then obviously we can just give a motivation for the second premise as well if need be. Right. So the motivation for the first premise is just that if you have a coin that's fixed, this is sort of an intuition pump. And if it lands on heads, 10 people pop into existence. If it lands on tails, 1 person pops into existence. And then let's just say you pop into existence, and no one told you which one it landed on, right? You would predict that it lands on heads because it makes your existence 10 times more likely, given there's 10 more observers of your type, right? So that's
Wait,
sort
I
of the
just
motivation
want to
for the
respond to
science there.
something.
Yeah, Cap, you can go.
Obviously, you asked us to motivate this type of value realism or more objective moralism. We already said that the prediction goes through even if the values are subjective, given that we have reason to believe about what this mind would prefer. Do you want to conclude? Because you're obviously mistracking. Also, we're not using God of the gaps. We're not saying that science can't explain X, so God must have did it. Right? We're saying that it's not
Yeah,
expected,
we're using
and we're using the
TOI
Bayesian likelihood
and
principle.
Bayesian
That's a
likelihood.
mistrack
Okay.
again, retard. But yeah, I mean,
Bro pulled out God of the
do
gaps.
you want to end the time here and just let them respond?
Okay, no, I wanna. There's a couple more things. So he said there's a lot of realists that don't take motivation externalism. I want to know why that's relevant to the argument whatsoever. Because again, we made an analogical induction from other minds to this mind, right? It has nothing to do with motivation externalism. I don't know why that's even relevant. But yeah, I gave the motivation for SIA. I gave the motivation for the anthropic argument. I don't think there's been a sufficient response to discoverability yet. Now we can let them speak. Go ahead.
All right, so yeah, first
Yeah, C will respond now.
Yeah, I just want to first point out the unfalsifiability of the discoverability hypothesis. So suppose that there is a universe where there are undiscoverable constants. Well, we would never know those constants are undiscoverable precisely because it is the case that they're undiscoverable. Presumably, the strategy that you're employing in order to argue that this universe is fine-tuned is to say, well, look, these constants are in a particular range, and the proportion of the constants that would permit life is smaller compared to the total possible constants, and so there's reason to believe that the universe is fine-tuned. These constants were not picked by chance, etc., etc. Well, how can we apply the same strategy to discoverability when, if there are these constants that are undiscoverable, we can never know they exist? For all we know, this could be a universe with a really low fucking proportion of discoverable constants, but we just don't know the undiscoverable constants because, epistemically speaking, as they're undiscoverable, we cannot discover that they're undiscoverable to begin with. Okay, so that's the first thing. I want you to respond to the unfalsifiability of that. The second thing is the sort of analogy you're making. You asked me, why is it symmetrical to believe that God's mind not being physical, like why does that make an asymmetry there? Obviously it makes an asymmetry there, right? We observe that people's values are going to be relative to cultures, right? We can look at different cultures. I can give you many empirics on this. People tend to value different things depending on the culture. For example, different religions are more prominent in different areas. In the Middle East, Islam. In the UK and Europe, maybe Christianity. In Italy, Latin America, Christianity, etc., etc., right? Different areas, different religions, different values, different moralities, okay? That's something that's observed because of physical things, right? Things that how people interact physically. We can't pair that to God. There are definitely things that imply that values and what people value are relative to cultures. But additionally, let's suppose that values are not relative to culture. Let's say that they're objective. That's just going to add more weight to the prior probability of your hypothesis, right? And when I say more weight, I mean negative weight. It's going to weigh it down. The reason why is because you're stipulating these values are objective, starts independent, etc., etc., that do not supervene on anything physical that we can interact with or observe in the universe. These are just queer properties, queerness, right? I just don't understand why these sorts of things are things I should be sympathetic towards. My hypothesis does none of that. It posits things that are of the same kind of things we regularly interact with. It does not posit any queer properties, so obviously going to have a way higher probability. Second of all, you didn't respond to my point about
All right, your
normalizability.
time is up. Time is up.
All right, I'm gonna respond to a few things and then let Cap handle it. So basically, C wants to charge our hypothesis with being unfalsifiable. Well, that's easy. There's an easy way to falsify it. Just having some principled reason that these constants would be discoverable under naturalism. That's literally all you need is a
I just want to
prediction
flag
from
that
naturalism.
C's not able to track because he said there can be a universe with a really low proportion of discoverable constants. Obviously, you're not able to track as long as the universe permits some discoverable. You are retard. You're not able to
You
track
lagged
this.
out.
Oh, I lagged out. Yeah, I'm just saying as long as the universe permits some discoverable constants, then it's in the DDOR. This guy's so retarded. Also, the point about cultures, right? Obviously, when you build an analogical induction, you can have some properties that are asymmetrical. I don't know why this would even be a defeater unless you think these properties are ones which are going to be
and
overly
even that,
relevant.
across all cultures, we see that life tends to value other life. So I don't even understand what the point is trying to make there. But
Yeah, we're
even,
making a general claim about what
like
humans
the
tend to
unfalsifiable
value.
point, all you would need to falsify what we're saying is a prediction under naturalism, or show why our hypothesis just doesn't predict this data strongly. So it's not unfalsifiable in any relevant respect. You're sort of saying it's unfalsifiable if they were undiscoverable. That's not the point. The point is our argument or our hypothesis is falsifiable because all you need is a prediction under naturalism or a hypothesis that's indifferent, right? So yeah, Cap. Anything else you think you need to? By the way, they still haven't responded to the Anthropic.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like these guys aren't really able to track the type of argument we're giving, but I'm gonna let them respond now. It's fine.
Okay, sweet. So I just want to get clear. First and foremost, I want to modify what you said. It's not that you're observing that minds tend to value other minds, right? You're observing human minds tend to value human minds or other human lives, right? Just to be clear. You can't make the claim that God's mind, which is wholly distinct from human minds as far as it's not physical, would value the same things that human minds do. We observe that human minds value things because of evolution, for example. People value marriage because it adds security. People value sexual reproduction because it helps propagate the human race, etc., etc. There are explanations for why we value the things that we do. It's not just that we value things just because we observe this queer property that no one can observe directly through physical sciences or through the physical instruments. Like, I think it's really ironic. You're talking about physical discoverability. You're positing these things that are not discoverable using any scientific instruments, right? Like, really weird sort of point there. Second of all, I already gave responses to your SIAs and all of that. I just don't think you tracked them, and I'm not going to repeat them because I've already mentioned it like 3 times. We can move on. I already gave an issue of using the principle of indifference here because it's going to lead to an absurd conclusion that we know is false. What else is there to say? Really, let me think. Axiologically speaking, the power probability hypothesis just weighed down even more. You can explain discoverability. Let's say like there is discoverability. You can just explain that. Oh, actually, let's start here. The DDOR is relevant here, right? Because it could be the case that the proportion of discoverable constants to undiscoverable constants in this universe is actually not that small. Like, it's actually not that unpredictable given naturalism, because we don't know how many undiscoverable constants there are in this universe because they are undiscoverable. And like, that's the whole point. Like, this is like saying, oh, I live in a universe where there's life. There's like 2 lives in this universe. It's like a volcanic landscape, right? There's only 2 lives. Oh, well, because there's life, God should exist because God permits life. Well, no, it's also, presumably explainable through naturalism if it's this like decrepit volcanic landscape that some life could plausibly come about. This is not the sort of argument you want to make, right? You want to show that, the proportion of life in universes or whatever else is way smaller. The proportion of discoverable constant universes is way smaller. But you haven't done that because it's unfalsifiable. So yeah, I think actually
Time is up.
not. Yeah, I think
Okay,
I'm
well, hold on. So I already responded to the point being falsifiable. You never fucking responded to my objection. I already gave the reason that our hypothesis is falsifiable. Okay, now.
Wait.
Yeah, go ahead, Capp.
I just want to respond. He said that people value things because of physical or naturalistic things, such as like things like to do with evolution. Obviously, we're talking about moral values. This seems to presuppose that these type of moral values are reducible down to prudential values in some cases. I don't know why I would even grant that at all. Maybe you have some type of argument for that. Also, you said that DDOR is irrelevant here when that's the datum that we're trying to get the prediction off. Retard. Obviously, we're just talking about whether or not the universe as a whole has any type of constants that are discoverable. If it's the case, then it falls within the DDOR, and you get the prediction.
He said he responded to the SIA point, but he just wasn't gonna repeat it. That's just Capp. He never responded to the SIA point or a hypothesis that predicts more observers making your existence more likely. He never fucking responded to that. He lied about responding to that. That's really fucking weird. Don't do that. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much everything. Obviously, our hypothesis is falsifiable, like, clearly. Yeah, so every point he made was just incorrect. I told you exactly.
Yeah, I think we can probably conclude after this because this is bad, bro.
We can let them have one more response, then we'll respond.
Yeah, no problem.
We'll just close out.
No problem. Okay, look, no, your hypothesis does not predict more observers for the reason I gave regarding normalizability, which you didn't respond to. Maybe the first thing. Yeah, I'm talking about life. I think you said like I was lost. I'm talking about life. I'm just using any paradigmatic example to show why what you're saying doesn't work. Obviously, the constants being undiscoverable means that it's unfalsifiable, right? Like, suppose that you were to falsify this, you would presumably show that, there are like the point is that if you can't discover these constants, then there's no way to know how many undiscoverable constants there are or how many constants there are that are undiscoverable, which is what's needed, right? So like, for example, say I'm trying to assess the probability of rolling a 6 on a dice. Because I know the total number of possibilities, the total number of options that are there, right? And I know the option I want, I can find a probability for relative frequency. You can't do that if you don't know how many undiscoverable constants there are. There's no way to measure the proportion of total constants in the universe to discoverable ones because you don't know the total constants. Because if there are undiscoverable constants, they can't be discovered for you to weigh and measure that probability through relative frequency, right? That's the whole point I'm making. I'm not going to repeat it again. Yeah, also the more realism point is like, ridiculous, right? Moral values seem to also supervene on cultures and stuff like that, supervene on values and stuff like that. Look at Nazi Germany. Look at what people thought was right to do to like the Jewish people because of like religion. Look at like slavery and stuff like that in the US, where they said, oh yeah, black people are like children of Ham, and that's why it's okay. They're subhuman, etc., etc. That's why it's right to discriminate against them. Obviously, morality seems to be for values, desires, tribalism. All of these things can be explained through a naturalistic hypothesis. In fact, you don't need to posit this God. Right, already given the stalking course objection, you don't need to posit this God that can explain, this sort of mind that's not like any other mind because it's not physical, this sort of thing that's aware without having any organs to be aware of things, etc., etc. You don't need to posit any of these queer properties like you're doing. I could posit my naturalistic hypothesis and still get the same update if there even is an update to be gotten because you haven't responded to normalizability objection. Actually, with that, I'm going to cede my time. I think I'm ready to conclude.
Yeah, that sounded like 2 minutes anyways. So yeah, I mean, again, like I can just respond to the falsifiability point one more time. Okay.
Yeah,
let's
I'll
see if
respond
he
to the
can-
moral realism.
Yeah, let's see if he can like get it this time. Okay. The hypothesis is that theism is true. The data that we're using is discoverability. Now, to falsify our hypothesis or our update, all you have to do is have a prediction or a principled prediction under naturalism or a hypothesis that's indifferent, and our view would be completely falsified. So it's not unfalsifiable. Okay.
Yeah, also I want to respond to the moral realism point. You said that it seems to supervene upon cultures. That's actually just question begging. Well, at the very least, it might not be question begging, but I don't see why those seemings are relevant given that we can explain that under moral realism and just embed some type of moral error within our conceptual scheme when we talk about the moral domain, right? There's no P not P with that. It doesn't seem to motivate. Obviously, this type of seeming here doesn't seem to motivate moral anti-realism. And also, you kind of begged the shit out of the question when you said that morals supervene upon these things. Also, I don't see why the
one more
seemings are
thing.
even relevant here.
A response to the SAA thing, right? He said that our hypothesis wouldn't predict more observers. Well, how is that the case, right? Because if we have this designer who can sort of infinitely create observers that he has motivation towards, how does that not just predict an infinite amount of observers or more observers than a hypothesis that is completely indifferent to the amount of observers that's in the universe, right? So this is basically the whole landscape. I don't think he responded to the Anthropic argument. I don't think he gave an adequate defeater to the discoverability point. I think he lost on the whole principle of indifference point. He sort of asked for the motivation for that, and then when we gave the motivation, he didn't respond. Yeah, I think given all those facts, me and Capp won the debate, man.
Wait, hold on. You made another point that I'm gonna engage with. Just to be clear. Look, the falsifiability stuff, just to be clear, I think you're completely confused on what I'm saying. I'm not saying falsify as if show that the update that you get is not larger than the update that I get. I'm saying falsify as in how can you even get an update at all? How even like I don't know how you're not getting this. I'm not gonna repeat it again. I repeat it 3 times. And my first boy up, you said I was lost, so I don't really feel privy on repeating it. The SIA stuff, predicting infinite amounts of observers is actually a vice for your view because in this universe, niggas die all the time. This universe seems like it's fine-tuned for life, but actually, if you look at the state of the universe, look at the state of humanity, look at the state of the world, how many deaths have occurred, would you really think that this being, this God that has great power to create the universe and design these constants would design the constants and design humans and design the physical world in such a way where individuals die daily from natural disasters, from non-natural disasters, like like human caused disasters and stuff like that, whatever. Like seems a bit ridiculous. Seems like an update that counts against your view, right? Lowers the probability of you given that evidence. What else is there to really say here? Yeah, the moral realism stuff, no one begged the question. I literally gave you many empirics on how people's moral values seem to supervene on their desires, on their cultures, on their beliefs, right? You didn't actually give any response to that apart from me saying I begged the question. Didn't respond to Nazi Germany, didn't respond to the US, didn't respond to how people weaponize religion and use religion which gives moral codes and moral commands in order to reflect their desires, right? When they said like, oh, you're children of Ham, and so therefore, it's right to do this and that. That's a moral command, right? They're saying it's okay, it's permissible, right? Presumably, and you didn't respond to that. So I guess it's like your last chance. Additionally, I can just think of like hypothesis in naturalism where there are an infinite number of possible worlds. I can take like a Lewisian aggregate view of modal realism where possible worlds is going to be maximal spatial temporal aggregates. And then I could just take a view that because that predicts the same amount of observers that yours predicts, because there's going to be a possible world for every single physical configuration possible, that actually naturalism can predict the same things you predict. Like, I don't understand how you're getting a high prediction.
Your time is up, retard.
All right,
so obviously the
I wanna
point about
respond real
objecting.
quick. I want to
Wait, he's retarded though.
the point about people dying isn't going to object to my hypothesis predicting an infinite amount of observers, right?
Also,
People dying doesn't mean that there isn't an infinite amount of observers over the course of time. Like, what are you talking about? People can die and there still be an infinite amount.
He made an even bigger blunder. He responded to that in the point about fine tuning, which as long as there's some life at all, fine tuning is the universe is just fine tuned as long as it falls within a narrow range. It doesn't matter if niggas die all the time. It doesn't matter if infinite amount of niggas die. As long as there's life within the universe and it falls within a narrow range of possible constants, then the universe is finely tuned. Retard. So that point didn't land. Also, I did respond to the point about the value seeming to supervene upon cultures. I said we can adopt moral realism and explain the same data using moral error within our conceptual scheme. We can say that these people are in moral error when they make these type of claims. Retard. You just said I didn't respond when I quite literally did. You fucking mistracked. And yeah, is there anything else we need to go over? Oh yeah, the point about moral realism. No, modal realism.
Oh my
It
gosh,
seems like
yeah,
that's
I mean,
gonna do some type of inverse gambler. I think so. I can't tell, but it seems
that would be. I think that would be inverse gambler. But either way, even if he takes a hypothesis like that, where every single possible world is just as actual as, or just as real as the actual world, that's just gonna lose on fucking ontological parsimony like horribly. And we're not positing.
Which was the point that he brought up from the onset.
And
he brought up
We're
parsimony.
not positing all these spatio, like temporally located possible worlds, right? We're just saying there's a being who can actualize it. So we're gonna win on parsimony there. If you use
I want to
modal
flag.
realism
I want to
get
flag for the
prediction.
judge. I want to flag for the judge. Cee's point from the onset was, "Oh, my hypothesis is more parsimonious than yours," but you understand how you just inflated your ontology ad infinitum, retard? Do you know how low the priors are going to be? Since you said that ontological parsimony lowers prior probability, retard, we can throw out your hypothesis by your standard.
Yeah, God.
You made your hypothesis fatter than Kim K's ass. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're dog shit. But yeah, I'm gonna let you respond.
All right, sweet. So these are all the points that I got down. The first point, people can die and there can still be an infinite amount of observers. It's like the most retarded response to the objection I just gave in the universe, right? Like, suppose I find myself in a universe, right, where people have been just dying and being tortured and getting fucked and destroyed by earthquakes, volcanoes, natural disasters, burnt alive, right? And all of that stuff. Yet there's just one life that exists. According to Capp, that's evidence for there being a designer, right? Because there's just one life that managed to survive the fucking hellscape that was created. Obviously not. Similarly, according to fucking Auggs, if there's such a world where people are dying, right, by the dozen every single day, but guess what? There are still observers being pumped out, and over a course of time, over an infinite amount of time, there'll be an infinite number of observers. Apparently, that's also evidence for there being a God. But if God really desired life, why would he design a world where life is regularly and constantly being destroyed and decapitated and wrecked, right? Over constants he has presumably total control over. Makes no sense. Second thing, he said you can adopt more realism and use more error in your conceptual scheme. I already responded to this by saying, well, first and foremost, it's just queer, right? These things are like not physically observable at all, right? Our understanding of morality that I've given, how people understand and conceive of morality, can already be explained by natural things. We need not posit these, anyways, we need not posit these queer things. And second of all, okay, sure, perhaps there are these moral truths that just no one knows about or cares about, right? Like, what the fuck? It doesn't matter. Also, that's not inverse gambler fallacy at all. That would be to say that the probability of something occurring happened or is more likely if there's more trials. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that given that there are more universes, there are an infinite number of universes for every physical configuration, you would predict the same things that you predict. You also said that it's low parsimony. I mean, yeah, I agree that it's not very parsimonious, but neither is your hypothesis. You're positing this non-physical entity that exists outside the bounds of space and time that's wholly dissimilar to anything we know of prior, has this sort of great-making property, great-making causal power that disagrees with our understanding of causation, disagrees with our understanding of energy, disagrees with everything we know about best scientific theories currently. You can't talk to me about parsimony because your argument is also parsimonious, also conflicts with our best scientific data. How can you use that against me? When I brought parsimony against you, you were like, oh, we can get a bigger update, it's fine, man, parsimony. I can do the same thing, right? What I'm showing is that I can do the same thing. I can match you blow for blow. It's perfectly fine.
Okay,
wait. So saying you could do the same thing means that you just kind of gave a micro concession about the point you brought up parsimony for earlier, right? If you're saying, oh, I can just get a bigger update as well, that just seems like you're conceding on the point earlier about when you brought up parsimony. So that's actually a micro concession. Also, I don't know why this type of moral error being queer.
I don't know why he got
I don't know why moral error being queer would even give reason to reject the view. Maybe like there's no reason for that.
Also, hold on. Also, hold on. What? moral error being queer. I need to know what that even means. Why is moral error queer? What does that even mean?
To be honest, I think
And
we can
then-
conclude.
And then
Like, this
again,
shit has
yeah,
gone on
the
for too
one
long.
last thing with the parsimony point, we win on parsimony if you're saying every possible world is just as real as the actual world, right? We win on parsimony because even like granting that maybe we lose on ontological parsimony to naturalism, we win on ontological parsimony given that because there's one being that can actualize the state of affairs versus an infinite amount. And then you said you didn't commit inverse gambler's fallacy, but it's just the case that an infinite amount of universes would make it more likely that we have a universe that just is inverse gambler's fallacy. You just said you weren't committing it and then committed it like right after.
Yeah, yo, Polar,
yeah,
you
I
want to
mean,
conclude?
we can fucking
Oh,
conclude.
yeah. I'm looking
Yeah, can I get my closing? Can I get my
He
closing?
said we
It's
can
been, like,
conclude in the chat.
40 minutes.
Can I get my closing? Hello?
You want to let him give close? Yeah, you can give a closing real quick.
Look, I'm just going to run through all of the objections I gave to that argument. The first objection, the main objection, the normalizability objection, just went like this, right? So the life-limiting constants can take any value within the set of real numbers, presumably. That's how they're getting this update. The proportion of life-limiting universes to total universes is really low because the range of values that are life-limiting is low compared to the total values that life-limiting constants can take, right? What constants can take. But there are an infinite number of real numbers. And so there are an infinite number of values that these constants can take. And so if you use the principle of indifference and assign equal probability to each of these values, and then try to find the relative frequency of it occupying any particular value, you get a probability of 0. I mentioned this at the beginning. I kept mentioning normalizability, and they just didn't respond to that at all, not one time. That's why I don't even think you can get an update from what they're talking about to begin with, because the way that they're getting this update is faulty. They can talk about the principle of difference all they want, but there are contexts where it fails. This is just one of them. Second of all, I brought up how the hypothesis is unfalsifiable. So typically what you want to do with these sorts of arguments, you want to say it's more likely that this thing is true or this thing is, designed because given an equal probability assignment to all of these options, likely, but we still observe it anyway. So like, for example, a dice is more likely to be biased because, it's less likely to get a 6. If it gets a 6 100 times, or the probability of it getting a 6 is really low. So it's more expected they'll be getting a 6 all these times if it was biased. But you can't do relative frequency if you cannot know how many total constants there are. For all we know, the proportion of life-emitting constants to total constants in our world is not that small at all, right? Or the proportion of discoverable constants to non-discoverable constants in our world is not that small at all. Because if there were these undiscoverable constants in our world, we wouldn't be able to discover them to confirm that they're undiscoverable, right? That's just going to be trivial. And so it could be the case that we live in a world that's actually not very fine-tuned for discoverability at all. There's very low proportions of discoverable constants in our world at all. What else was there? The moral realism point was just ridiculous. The hypothesis just kept stacking more and more theoretically unsavory conclusions. Things like God has a mind, but God is not physical. God exists outside of the bounds of space and time. God can violate things like causality, things like conservation of energy, violate all of our physical principles, violate everything that our best scientific theories have accumulated over the course of thousands of years. He can just violate all of that, right? And exist at this sort. Whereas my hypothesis is just naturalism, right? I can explain everything that they do.
All right, your
without
closing
anything
time
different.
is over.
My fucking gosh.
Capp and Auggs,
Capp,
y'all want to give closing or no?
Capp, just give a quick closer, bro. I have to fucking shit.
Yeah, he didn't respond to the several analogical inductions we made adequately. He didn't really give an account as to why these type of asymmetry and properties is going to be a defeater towards the inductions that we made. Also, he brought up parsimony as a defeater to our argument, and then later on he did a concession that it doesn't matter. Given after he proceeded to make his hypothesis infinitely less parsimonious than ours, he inflated his shit like a giant hot air balloon. Holy shit! Also, God being able to violate all of our physical principles, that should don't matter, gang. You'd still get an update given the evidence, right? Like, that doesn't seem like it's a defeater towards the argument at all. I'll just talk about priors. It doesn't matter either, given that we're using the Bayesian likelihood principle. And something with low priors would be able to get confirmed given a high likelihood ratio, and we're making a cumulative case, so obviously the high likelihood ratio is going to be very high here. We did respond. We responded to the whole point about normalizability, but this retard is unable to track. We responded to the point about moral realism. He was unable to give an argument for moral anti-realism. He didn't sufficiently and adequately motivate that. Also, we said that even if we grant moral anti-realism, which we didn't, by the way, he still had that burden and he never proved it. We could still get an update given the analogical induction. Also, he didn't really respond to the inverse gambler point. Like, he just quite literally is making an inverse gambler fallacy. He's just saying that given an infinite amount of universes, we would predict X datum, right? Obviously, that's just the inverse gambler fallacy. Maybe I can like link a Wikipedia page for this retard because he doesn't know shit about what he's talking about. And yeah, I think we can probably conclude here. and have Polar give judgment.
All right, cool. I'm gonna mute everyone while I give judgment. The debates were 161 and
Can you give verdict
162.
first and then explain? Because I really want to hear it and I have to shit.
All right, yeah. Okay. So firstly, when it was, so this has been a 2v1 for around, a while. I think when it was a 2v2, I was somewhat leaning towards C and Freedagoat, but now it became a 2v1. And I think once it became a 2v1, I think C became overwhelmed and he started blundering multiple times. He was mistracking. He didn't really efficiently or sufficiently reply to multiple points that Capp and his teammate Auggs made. I think he got overwhelmed pretty badly. I don't think he was able to sufficiently substantiate anything. And I think I'm gonna give verdict to Capp and Auggs.